What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey Malari. So tonight, yet again, another special episode back in the studio in WZBC. Have two returning guests on the show. We got Dan the Man. He's the King of Hasbrouck Heights. He was on the show in December, came on with Ryan Hosey, Mark Walsh, Jacob Curry, came on with all of them to talk everything sports. He's coming back on. This is his second appearance on the show, I believe. Yep. And then we have Dylan Reilly, New York Giants superfan, New York Yankees superfan as well, can't forget, in the studio to talk all things baseball. We're going to talk all MLB tonight with obviously opening day starting on Thursday. Dylan was here just about a few weeks ago, right? 2 weeks ago, and then you were here for the Giants players. This is his third appearance, Dan's second appearance. So two usual guests now on the show coming in for a second and a third time. So how are we doing, Dan? How are we doing, Dylan?
Doing pretty well. Can't complain. On the best radio show in the Northeast.
Wow,
easily.
What a compliment. What a compliment. Well, it's even better now having you guys in, so I appreciate it. Thank you guys for taking the time. Psyched to talk everything baseball with you guys. So we'll start off. We're going to go by division. We're going to start off. We're going to do mostly just American League divisions. Probably won't talk many NL League divisions, but we will talk about the New York Mets. That'll be a big segment. So it'll be start of the AL Central. We'll break down each team there, talk about them, and give our thoughts. Then go to the AL West. A lot to talk about there, which you just broke down before we got on air. We're going to talk a lot about the Angels. Obviously, I'm a big Ohtani and Trout fan. I actually have high predictions for them coming into this season, unlike probably most, but
nowhere to go but up.
Exactly. Nowhere to go but up is right for that franchise. And then we'll dive into the AL East a ton, Red Sox, Yankees, and then obviously get into the Mets. The Mets had a very active offseason, probably the most active in all of the MLB. So
Love that.
a lot to talk about there. So we'll start off. AL Central, what team are we going to start off with? I'll let you guys pick and then we'll dive in.
I think we should get the Tigers out of the way.
Okay,
There's very little to say. Like we were just saying, there's very little to say about them.
Let's start with them.
Tigers finished, I think,
Dead last, yeah. It was dead last.
Them and the Royals were in a dead heat for worst team in
They
the
were
division.
one game ahead.
Second
to last.
There you
One
go.
game ahead of
Okay.
the Royals. There you go.
Fourth in the division. They didn't add anyone in the offseason besides pitcher Michael Lorenzen. And they...
Some fire kicks, though. Fire kicks.
That's true.
That does count.
That's a good point.
That does count. If you guys are wondering. It does.
And that's all there is really to say about them. They're projected to be second to last in the division again because of the Royals equal.
Yeah. I just don't mind. Yeah.
I guess they're tanking.
I would say that too. Which I don't mind actually some players in that lineup. I actually am a fan of Miguel Cabrera. He's old, but he still can hit like 250, 260. Yeah.
Is he not playing?
He's still playing, yeah. One more
thought he
year.
was-
This will be it for him. This will be his final season in the MLB. Jonathan Scope, I've actually always been a big fan of. He took a step down over the last couple of years, but he's still a good player. I like him. And then Eduardo Rodriguez, former Red Sox.
Yep.
He's actually their number one.
So, I mean, it is interesting.
Coming back from
their
injury,
their
but-
rotation is pretty good. I mean,
Yeah, Matthew Boyd's actually solid, right? Lefty?
yeah,
Lefty.
and last year, I mean, they had, I think, their rotation in wins above replacement was in the top half of the league, but they did have like by far the worst offense.
Yeah, could not hit.
And it's only going to be worse this year, probably.
Seems like they didn't add any bats. I mean, Javi Baez, Dan was a big fan of him a couple years ago. He was on the Mets, and I even said to Dan, I thought he got paid too much. It worked out for you guys not paying him, obviously.
Yeah,
So
it did. But, I mean, he shows so much heart out there on the field with those crazy slides, crazy plays in the field, and then just has so much energy when he's hitting the ball. The strikeouts are so tough, and you hate seeing that as a fan, but also just the energy that he brought with Lindor, I loved for the short...
Yeah.
That both of them were hurt at the same time, so it was...
Those few games they played...
Yes.
They had a lot of swagger together.
Very few
without
games on the field
question.
together, but when they were both out there, man, it was fun to watch them.
Yeah.
But McNeil has been doing much better in the last 2 years, so can't really complain there. But I saw that the Tigers lost Fulmer.
yeah, they did. He went somewhere else in free agency, right?
I mean,
Where'd he go?
yeah, I think
Atlanta was it, or?
Chicago.
Chicago.
Cubs. I like him because he's former Met prospect in the OG Cespedes deal.
Ancient history.
He was a great prospect coming up, and then in the pros he started out very well as a starter, but then I think he got hurt, and now he's just been exclusively a reliever, and he's done well in that role too. I wanted the Mets to get him, but
He was traded at the deadline to Minnesota. I mean,
Yeah.
kind of a
That was a
shot
good
at
deal
him.
for them.
One guy in that lineup, though, is a good piece, which we failed to mention, which I see now in the projected lineup. Riley Green had a really hot spring training, former first-round pick, 5th overall in 2019. 4 home runs in spring training, batting .308, 52 at-bats, .960 OPS. So he's probably the only real big bright spot in that lineup. Yeah. Among other pieces, I mean, Miguel Cabrera is long past his prime, but he's a serviceable number 6, I guess, batter in your lineup.
And we should mention Torkelson.
Torkelson's a stud.
Torkelson did debut last year and was disappointing, but I think there's good reason to think he'll turn around and at least be a decent contributor this year.
We're strong with home runs, yeah.
Where do you go to school?
Torkelson went to... It was a big school.
I'd say like Arizona State or something, but...
I can look right here. It was a big school. Right here.
But he had like a ton of homers. I remember he had like 35 homers
Michigan.
or something.
I think it's Michigan.
Really?
No, it's not Michigan. Arizona State. You drove it.
Wow.
Yeah. I know stuff.
You beast. You animal. I mean, hey, it was first overall pick in 2022. It's another first overall pick in that lineup.
Exactly.
They have a good amount. And then another guy in their lineup who's the projected actually starting center fielder and leadoff hitter, Matt Veiling. 2 home runs in spring training, hit 330 at-bats. So small sample size, but, I mean, I guess some young talent in there, considering most guys in their lineup besides Miguel Cabrera and Scope are on the younger side. Javi Baez is a little older, but Green, Veiling, Torkelson, all younger. So,
I'm sure some of them will grow.
Definitely. I mean, they're going to be probably tough for another couple of years. They're not a good team. But they're building for the future, obviously, and that's kind of, especially in the MLB nowadays, there's not really as much tanking as there are in other sports, but you could build a farm system through the draft. You can draft well. So,
well, there's some teams tanking, and there's some teams just not competing.
And then you got the Cincinnati Reds that just don't even want to be an MLB team.
Yeah, but we'll get to them.
We'll dive into them. Which last time Dylan was on, we said we're going to have him come on and talk baseball, and I said we'll talk Cincinnati Reds. And you said we could have a whole episode on the Cincinnati Reds.
We'll do them,
and then ineptitude.
Them in Pittsburgh will be like a double episode.
We might have to. Yeah, we could spend a couple hours talking about how poor those franchises have been running managing themselves, but.
Anyways,
that's the Detroit Tigers. Not really much expectations for them out of any of the three of us, but I guess some bright pieces and young guys to build on. Green and I guess Torkelson. They can hope turn their.
You could see them. You could see them being good in a few years.
Hopefully, help them turn their franchise around. And then Eduardo Rodriguez obviously had myocarditis. He had COVID actually in 2021. I think it was when he was at the Red Sox, or no, it was 2022 with the Tigers, and then missed most of last season. It was a good Red Sox starter for some years and. Ended up having some medical issues and didn't really play much last year for them. He only played 17 starts he only had with them. So
he's a stud.
Yeah, he was good for them. He has a 1.47 ERA in 5 games in spring training. So, I mean, hey, some of their stats actually are pretty good in spring training. I know it's a small sample size, but we'll see. But not really much expectations from any of us with them. So that's the Tigers. Anything else to add on them?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not really much to say. I mean, we did get actually a good 3 or 4 minutes on it, which is impressive. We'll dive into, I guess, the next team that's just as bad, but I guess a little better, the Royals.
Yes, it's got to be the Royals.
The Royals. We'll start there with them. They still have one of the best catchers in the league. Salvador Perez, still a stud. Mm-hmm. One of the best power hitters still at base. I think he had around 40 home runs last year. He's still actually really good. Even though he's battled injuries, probably 2 of the last 5 or 6 years, still a good player when he's on the field. And they did add Fernando Reyes, which you were talking about, right before we got on. Yeah, they did add him. That's a number 5 hitter.
I have a personal vendetta against Fernando Reyes because I had him in fantasy last year, and he was literally worth negative points as a DH, which is hard to do. You have to strike out a lot for that to happen.
There was a year he was good. Yeah, it was 2021. He had 30 home runs. He was pretty good.
He fooled me.
37 in 2019.
He fooled me.
He did. Yeah, he only had 14 home runs.
Your boy JBJ.
JBJ, he actually made the roster too, which I'm really happy about. He obviously he's been a journeyman now in the MLB from the Red Sox, the Brewers, back to the Red Sox, getting cut by the Red Sox, and now Kansas City Royals. So hoping things work out for JBJ. He's batting 8th in the lineup projected, but still one of the best fielders in baseball. I would put him in the lineup every day, even though he can't hit, which consistently can't hit. He can actually go on hot streaks. I'm not saying he's great and he's going to be looking like, Jose Altuve hit 330, but he can go on hot streaks and hit 300 for a 10-game stretch and play great defense, and then he's going to have those 180 stretches too.
I think now more than in years past, you got to be able to contribute offensively as a center fielder.
Definitely.
Defense isn't enough, I feel like.
And I don't even think he's playing center, is he?
Right field. Yeah, right field.
Yeah.
They have...
especially as a right fielder, you got to...
They don't have anyone better, but that is...
I mean, he doesn't
have the Royals, but...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's fine on the Royals, I guess. I mean, I would take him as a depth piece just on the bench. I mean, he's still great defensively, but as you said, you need to be able to hit offensively.
So in the offseason, they added Jordan Lyles from the Orioles.
Yep.
They added Yarbrough from...
The Rays.
Ryan
Yarbrough, yeah.
Yeah, and they added Aroldis Chapman.
Chapman, your boy.
Yankee, yeah.
Big chapter about Chapman when you talk.
Right.
Hopefully he doesn't add any more tattoos.
Right, exactly. Jordan Lyles was a solid starter last year. I think he'll probably be solid again.
He's number 2.
They have him at 2. I mean, Greinke is getting it. It's a legacy.
Greinke's about
it's a legacy
37,
one.
probably 38.
That's
Greinke's
fine.
up there in age. 39.
Yeah.
Wow, even older.
I mean, obvious Hall of Famer, so I don't, if he won't, they can let him be their number 1 starter as long as they want. Whatever.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I mean, considering their team going really nowhere, probably.
Right,
Really.
Yeah,
exactly.
hopefully Singer will get a step up there.
Yeah, Singer, I mean, he's got a lot of potential. And
He struggled last year, didn't he, though?
I think it was his rookie year, right?
Was his rookie year?
Yeah, he was inconsistent. I
Yeah,
mean, he had
that's
some
what it
great
was, yeah.
I
starts.
think he was with Team USA.
3.23 ERA, actually, overall. Pretty good season, actually.
I think he was just
He
with
probably was
Team
inconsistent,
USA
that's what it was.
in the World Baseball Classic.
Wow.
Yeah, he was on the team, yeah. He's going into now his 4th season, but
As
only...
well as Bobby Witt.
Bobby
Yeah,
Witt
him
Jr.,
on the
yeah.
team as
Bobby
well.
Witt Jr.,
So,
too.
that's
That's another guy you could talk about.
I was going to say,
Singer was good last year, 3.23 ERA.
There's 2 guys in the lineup that I'd say are really possible standouts. It's Bobby Witt, who was excellent offensively last year, but also by far the worst defensive shortstop in the league.
Yeah, a lot of errors. Yeah.
So you hope that, last year was his rookie year. You hope that he could be just bad at defense and he would be like their best player.
Yeah.
Because he's an excellent hitter. And if he can be even like halfway decent on defense as a shortstop, he'll be an all-star.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think a lot of times what happens with these shortstops coming up, they focus a lot on one area, like coming up, and it's very difficult to perfect both areas right away in the majors. You saw it with Glaber. He had the offense, and the defense was just not there. Just did not track, and now he's second baseman, and I don't think the Yankees will ever again try him at short. So
No, it won't be.
Definitely not.
Yeah. I agree with you there, though. Some guys do get... I wouldn't say it's rushed sometimes. Sometimes they just, are working on one thing, like you said. And that's the high thing about being a guy like Torres, right? They put him at second and short. I don't think he ever got time at third, but he was splitting time between the two.
When Ahmed Rosario came up with the Mets, he was supposed to be top-tier defense and top-tier offense, and the defense was all right at first, and then he picked up the offense, and then the defense fell off a cliff. So it's with these shortstops, you never know what happens.
Yeah.
Like look at Semien. He was like the worst shortstop by far. They move him to second, and then he's fine. So it's like,
yeah,
and
you're right.
into the second. So.
And he still gets paid as much money. He would, even if he's the worst defensive shortstop, he's going to get the money because of his offensive ability. Which one other guy in the lineup, though, Salvador Perez, like we mentioned, 23 home runs last year, did miss 48 games. The year before, 2021, 48 home runs.
Yes.
So
This
he is
has a
capable of
catcher
that.
record.
Probably won't have 40 again, I'd imagine, but maybe 30, 35 would be good for that lineup.
Yeah, even if he's
32 years old.
Yeah, even if he performs at the same level as last year, he'd be one of the most valuable catchers in the league.
Definitely.
Because he's a pretty,
defensively, he's got a good arm, too.
He's solid. Yeah. And,
Yeah, he's definitely great for the clubhouse with those new guys.
for sure.
Definitely.
And Vinny Pasquantino.
Yeah,
Team
that's their
Italy
fourth.
legend.
That's their fourth.
Is a solid major leaguer. He's young. A lot of room to improve.
Yeah, I don't know too much about him last year. Besides when the Red Sox played the Royals, I didn't really follow him too much. But 295 batting average last year, 833 OPS, 10 home runs, 258 at-bats.
Yeah.
Probably only played about half the season, it looked like. 72 games, so just about half, so less than half. But another young piece, he's projected fourth in the lineup, and what did he hit in spring training? 217 in spring training, but only 23 ABs, so, as I said, small sample size. Which, the Red Sox spring training, they were 10-0 at one point and 9-0, then they finished 14-14. So, spring training doesn't mean too much. But at the end of the day, small sample size, hopefully some of these guys get back on track. Especially the teams that aren't going
Last
anywhere.
year, Dom Smith hit like 330 and like 8 home runs in spring training, and then
he won the MVP.
That is the best player in baseball. Do you guys end up, DFAing him, right, or something? Or trading him? You traded him, right?
So first... No, we DFA'd Cano.
That's what it was.
We had to choose between keeping Dom Smith or Cano, and we decided to roll with Dom Smith because he had like a 4-for-5 game, had like 4 ribbies.
To play a
the
couple
last
positions,
game before
too.
the cutoff. We decided to cut Cano, which honestly was a good decision because he also stunk. And then Dom Smith never really figured it out. Last year, we had him in the minors for 3 months, and even when there was a spot for him in the majors, we didn't call him up. And he was a free agent. We non-tendered him, and I think he signed with the Nationals.
Nationals, yeah, no.
They'll actually have a spot at first base for him. So.
Definitely. Another team that's struggling, obviously trying to rebuild. So we're talking about a lot of rebuild teams, huh? We haven't got to the Reds yet.
There's a lot of rebuilding.
The Reds could be a different episode, like you said. You could talk all day about that team and the Pirates. But as for the Royals, though, there's a couple young pieces on that team. Obviously, Bobby Witt Jr., another first-round pick. A lot of guys in this, on these teams that are rebuilding have a lot of first-round picks that are high draft picks because they're, obviously we're struggling. And if these guys pan out, obviously it'd be a good building piece for the future. But Witt did struggle. He was actually decent the first few weeks of last season, and then struggled towards the middle of the season at about the end. I'm not sure if he finished, his batting average for the season, but defensively, like you said, was not great at all. And then offensively, he finished the season 254, 20 home runs though, which is pretty good. Yeah. But I thought the first week or two of the season, I think he started hot, if I remember right.
He did. Yeah.
He was hot, and then Seiya Suzuki was great the first week or two of the season too. Yeah, another guy, another piece on a team that's rebuilding for the Cubs. But anything to add about the Royals though?
I think that's basically it. Actually, what I will say is they're in a worse place than the Tigers. The Tigers have a much better farm system. The Royals do not.
Yeah.
But that's kind of going beyond this. They won't be good next year, obviously. So.
I mean, they don't really spend much money either. Neither one of those teams. I mean, the Tigers do have a couple big contracts. Miguel Cabrera got that big contract years ago. He might even got a 1 year. I think he's finishing out his contract. I think that's what it is. Then he's retiring. And then obviously Javi Baez got that big deal. Eduardo Rodriguez got decent money. For a team that doesn't really want to spend money, the Tigers gave decent money. They were spending money with Dave Dombrowski. Once Dombrowski left, they started doing that. We're not going to spend any money. But the Royals really don't spend on anyone for the most part. Off the top of my head, I don't think they have anyone besides probably Salvador Perez making over.
And Greinke.
Greinke,
he just re-signed a new deal, which was like nothing. So I'm
sure Perez probably makes the most the team, I imagine, off the top of the head. But besides that, there's no one on that team that gets paid. So a lot of rebuilding teams that aren't spending money. But if they were to, I mean, who knows? Maybe could change that luck.
They're probably paying Ken Griffey as well. So
hey, the Reds still are. He's the third highest paid player, so that's impressive. Next team, AL Central. What do we got?
We want the Twins. I don't know.
Twins or Guardians?
Yeah, we could do Twins.
Start with the Twins. I'm with it. That's actually a lineup I actually like. I actually do like the Twins lineup.
It's interesting.
They got
Gallo lead off.
Joey Gallo.
First baseman, Joey Gallo.
Not the best lineup. I'm not saying it's the best lineup in baseball. But there are some pieces in that lineup like Michael A. Taylor, solid center fielder. I actually like his offensive production. I actually took him a lot in. I don't know if you guys know, MLB beat the streak, pick a play to get hit every day.
Oh, yeah.
So he's probably at about 230 or 240 like a couple years ago. But every time I picked him, he was money. I was like 8 for 8 with the guy.
Really?
Like every other night I'd pick him. Like every other 3 nights I'd pick him. He'd get hits. He was money for me.
He was with the Nationals for a
World Series, right?
Yeah, I think he was there.
Decently long time, probably around like 5 years or so, and he's an absolute jet. So he's probably a very good center fielder for him. I haven't really seen him in the last 2 years or so.
Decent center fielder. He's got a decent glove.
But yeah, he's an absolute jet. They have some good players.
It is an interesting lineup with Joey Gallo batting leadoff for this. This is MLB, .com's projections here, but Joey Gallo batting leadoff's interesting. Correa though, obviously, which I'll let Dan talk about Correa. Dan, what are your thoughts on Carlos Correa? Obviously, there was the rumor he was going to be a New York Met, which I actually think it works out for you guys. I do think if there were to be a chance that Ohtani were to leave the West Coast, I think he's probably going to stay in the West Coast if he were to. That frees up money that you could blow the bank on him and give him anything he wants. And also, Correa did come with a lot of headaches, obviously, with the medical issues. And if 2 teams were against signing him because of it, something must have been up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's from a franchise perspective, it's probably good that they didn't get Correa because they have Brett Beatty, a top 20 prospect in the MLB right now, waiting in the wings in AAA. Many fans thought that he was going to be called up to start the year, but it'll probably take about a month or so. They want him to get a little bit better defensively. So we're rolling with Eduardo Escobar at third. But in terms of Correa, I think it was a good move in the end not signing him, but it's just so deflating as fans to think, we're getting top 3 or 4 third basemen in the league, and never mind. It just takes the wind out of your sails right there. Especially after like the crazy offseason that the Mets had, the last thing that you remember is that we almost got Correa, but didn't. So probably a good move, but it just stinks as a Met fan to knock out him.
I would agree. You're very high on Beatty, so you'd want Beatty to be in that lineup. Beatty's
smooth swings.
I was gonna say obviously Beatty's a top prospect, so if you have him coming up, he'd have to play a different position if you have Correa at third, right? So
yeah, they were thinking about him in left, and even Beatty said I'd absolutely play left when it looked like the Mets that were getting Correa, but don't really have to worry about that now.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 2-week process, right? Of if he's going to sign it out with the Giants, then the Mets, and
I think if you add in the time with the Giants, it turned into like a month-long thing.
It was a full month,
which
I'll find the breakdown.
It was very silly. I think the Mets made the right move. With a guy like if you have any questions about the health of an infielder, you can't sign him to a 10-year deal.
Yeah.
It's like
definitely. Yeah, I mean, there were 2 teams that were against it, too. It wasn't like it was just you guys. There were 2 teams, and obviously that's part of the issue. But here's the timeline. November 7th, he opted out of his deal with the Twins. December 13th, agreed to a 13-year, $350 million deal with the Giants, so just about a month and change later. 8 days later, agrees to an 12-year deal with the Mets, $315 million. So December 13th, Giants. December 21st, Mets gets even, I think it was more money per year, right?
A little bit more, yeah.
A little bit more per year, but less, overall. Then January 10th, signed a 6-year, $200 million deal with the Minnesota Twins. So just about less than a month, December 13th and January 10th, 3 different organizations, which is nuts.
Yes.
Which is nuts. But I think if you look at it in the long run, I've been reading over the last year or so that Steve Cohen, the Mets owner, really wants Ohtani, so there'd be a chance you guys would go and get him.
Yeah,
I don't know if he wants to go to the East Coast. That's the only thing. But if he were to, I'll give you guys the betting favorite. I'd even go the Yankees at 2.
Yeah, I mean, I would have supported a deal even more than 200 for 6 years, just because I hate these deals that are like 15 years for $400 million, because then you're on the hook for when this player's 42 or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think if they were to give him
You
7 years,
you don't want a Carlos Correa day.
Yeah. It would be a legit thing. With a 13-year deal, it would have been. Definitely a 12-year, because he's. I mean, the doctor's saying his knees, they are his leg. They only had constant about 7 years or something, 6 or 7 years.
The doctor said something. They didn't publicly say what it was, and I
they
guess
didn't say
won't. But they said that something about it was concerning. If it was concerning to 2 franchises, I think that's because clearly it was serious.
It was his ankle.
Ankle was it? Yeah.
He had surgery on it back in
2014 in the minors, right? Yeah.
It was around the time when he was still in the minors, I think. And even though he never really missed time from it in the majors yet, he's had a few instances where he was wincing and stuff, sliding at the bases, and the physical, looking at the impact of the surgery, some doctors were concerned that it could very well be a problem in the next few years.
Definitely.
And if not in the next few years, then definitely when he's 36. So.
That's why 6 was the gap, I think. I think 6 was the most the Mets were going to go, right? Didn't you guys go for a 13-year deal or 12-year deal to 6 or 7 or something?
I think we made an offer similar to what the Twins did, maybe 1 or 2 more years, but with a lot of contingencies, with if he missed a certain number of games, there were opt-outs available for the Mets.
That's why they think he was going to last 7 years or 8 years.
And I think the Twins just gave him straight 6 for 200, no contingencies. So
when you look at that team, they're not really paying many guys besides Byron Buxton got that big deal. That's about it, really.
I think it's a good move for them.
Yeah, just to
talk about
just to recap their offseason moves. They added Christian Vazquez,
former Red Sox.
They traded for Pablo Lopez from the Marlins,
which was a good trade, actually. I didn't mind that.
It was a very interesting trade. They traded away Arias, the best contact hitter in the league. They traded away Gio Urshela, who was starting at third for them.
Now another Angel.
Yes. Although they have 3 third basemen on the roster.
The Angels, Rendon and Urshela, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what they do.
So they re-signed Correa, like we were just saying, and then not a free agency move, but their pitcher, Kenta Maeda, is going to be returning from arm surgery.
Fully healthy, supposed to be, right? So
they say. We'll see.
He's another guy that spent, before we got on air, a couple of guys that, get paydays or go to different teams when they were successful, and whether it be LA or somewhere else, they go and get some money. We mentioned a couple of guys, Ryu on the Blue Jays, mentioned Jose Barrios on the, going from the Twins to the Blue Jays. We mentioned multiple guys that, went from team to team that were great, had injuries, and then just never really found it. Maeda's another thing. Yes, you're right. Maeda's another example. Sonny Gray's actually projected their number 2 starter, according to MLB.com. I do like Pablo Lopez, though, only 27 years old, 3.75 ERA last year, 10-10 record in Miami. I think the interesting thing with that Arias trade is they probably were just looking at their lineup saying, what's more of a need right now? Which Arias probably get paid in a couple of years. He'll get paid because, as you said, the best contact in baseball. They probably said, let's go get a younger pitcher. And 27 is not crazy young, but it's still considering there's Sonny Gray, who's over 30, and Maeda, who's over 30. They probably should have, went to get. Probably good idea for them to go get a younger pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, Arias is a very, very good player, but it looks like they were a little bit expendable at third base at the corner positions. And also at the same time, since Pablo Lopez was from the Marlins, all I know is how the Mets handled him, and they absolutely blew him out of the water. He is nowhere close to Alcantara's talent. So
no, he's like a 3-starter.
Yeah,
I like him.
He's a good pitcher.
They have him listed at number 1. So
a lot of these are one.
If
but
he
that's
is,
a 2 or
if
3,
he is their true number 1, then it's a little bit tough, and I don't know how they're going to match up against a team like the Yankees or Astros with such worse pitching. But
that's yeah,
we'll see how they do.
That's, I mean, you look at their lineup and it is solid, but like their pitching is just
it's tough.
Good.
Taylor Mahle, I mean, they traded from last year? I think they traded for the deadline. Yeah, traded for the deadline. Sonny Gray's 33 years old. He's up there in age.
Yeah.
Maeda, I don't even know how old he is.
Coming off
I'd imagine he's 35. It's just
yeah.
a guess, but I'd imagine at least 35, 36, 34. Only pitched 21 games in 2021 he played 21 games and obviously missed all of 2022.
Right. And wasn't great.
Was not great. 4.66 ERA in 2021. But the year before that, 2.7 ERA for Minnesota after they got him from the Dodgers. But yeah, I mean, a lot of guys in that lineup, or in that rotation, I should say, are on the back ends of their career.
Yeah. I mean, Lopez is probably their best pitcher, and also the pitcher with the most upside, just given his age.
I mean, Gray's 33 at a 3.08 ERA last 8.5 record, but he is 33 years old and has had injuries too. So I didn't mind the Lopez trade. I think Rise is going to get himself some money at some point. So
yeah,
that might be part of it.
I think it was a smart trade. Just the Twins have a lot of deficiencies.
Yeah,
even with that trade.
It's an interesting lineup, though. Byron Buxton's a stud if he can stay on the field.
Oh, yeah.
If he can play 120 games, that's a win.
Him and Correa, it's like the question is health.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Buxton played what last year? Let's see how many games. Gun to my head, I'd say 100. That's just a guess here. 92.
Wow.
He hasn't played over 100 games more than once in his career. That's since 2015 to 2022. He's only played over 100 games once.
Yeah, I mean,
which is nuts.
If he stays healthy, I think he could absolutely be a top 10 player in the league, but he just hasn't.
I mean, you look at his stats, 28 home runs in 92 games. That's nuts.
He's like a Hall of Fame talent.
Mind you,
ridiculous.
Like 8 of those games, he probably got only one at bat in and then came out because of injury. Because he comes out every game injured.
I mean, there were games where they legitimately just pinch hit him. Like
even when he was hurt, because he's like, you have a chance of going long. I mean, he has 98 home runs in his career and has only played 585 games. So impressive. As I said, a lot of those games were games he was, either hurt or got hurt, mid-game. He used to be a base stealer, which he stopped doing that over the last few years. He went from 29 stolen bases in 2017, and over the last 3 years, just 17 stolen bases between 2020 and 2022.
Yeah.
Injury risk, obviously, that's probably part of it. But yeah, like you said, he could honestly be a top 10 player in baseball. That was another first-round pick, right? Yeah, second overall pick in 2012. So a lot of these teams, I mean,
2012.
I mean, he was a top prospect in the MLB for 2 or 3 years. He was 2 or 3. I think he was 1 right before he got up. But
yeah, I think they'll be a playoff team, but probably not really gunning for anything.
Yeah, I would agree there.
Yeah.
So that's the Astros. Anything else? I mean, not the Astros. We'll get to the Astros, but that's the Twins. Anything else to add on them?
Let's see what Joey Gallo can do at the leadoff.
Oh yeah,
quite a leadoff
Joey
guy.
Gallo, comeback season,
first base and leadoff. Gotta love to see it.
I mean, the shift, the
with the ban and shift, it will really
help him.
It'll help him. There'll be Alex Verdugo is actually going to be hitting like 300 now, 100%. The amount of times he hits in the shift every game is nuts. I think his expected batting average was like 295 or something at one point this season. When I was doing my podcast last summer, I think he was projected like 295, and his real batting average was like 230 because the amount of times he hit in the shift. He had like I think top 5 in baseball between the expected batting average and actual batting average because how unlucky he was hitting to the shift.
Yeah. Joey Gallo just suddenly hits 330.
Imagine. I thought it was going to be better on the Dodgers. Then he went there and was brutal. But guys go to the Dodgers and find their careers.
I think my dad would throw the TV into the wall.
All right. Want to move on to the White Sox?
Yes, White Sox. Let's hit them. White Sox, interesting team yet again. Another team that's had expectations over the last few years. The Twins last year, teams had expectations for going to the season, at least somewhat. When they signed Correa, they had a better lineup going into last year, and then yet again, same thing every single year, not enough pitching and injuries. The White Sox actually have an interesting rotation, a pretty good rotation.
Very good rotation.
Cease, Beast, Lynn, Giolito, Clevenger, Kopech. Kopech, me and Dan were talking about earlier today, former Red Sox prospect. He was top 5 in the Red Sox farm, so top 3, I think, when they traded him. He was a top MLB prospect when we traded Chris Sale, traded him for Chris Sale. Interesting lineup, though. Elvis Andrus being their 9-hitter. I want him in the Red Sox. Andrews has always been a good player. I want him as a Red Sox. I wanted him to be our second baseman. We didn't have one at one point, but ended up, not signing him. He ends up going to Chicago, being their now 9-hitter, being their starting second baseman. Andrew Benintendi, probably the biggest ad in the offseason, or one of them. They got Clevenger as well. I consider Benintendi were a bigger ad. I don't know, but
I would agree.
I mean, their rotation's pretty good. I'll let you talk about their rotation. I know both of you guys are fans of players, in that rotation. I know Dan's a big Cease guy, so I'll let you talk about him.
I mean, Cease, don't not to jump ahead, but I mean, he was a Cy Young, right?
Candidate,
He ended up being top 3.
Yeah, he was a candidate.
As a reliever,
2.2 ERA last year, 14.8 record, 227 strikeouts, 184 innings. Pretty good margins there.
Right. I mean,
pretty good margins.
Yeah, he has an absolutely elite curveball. And they just have a lot of guys with a lot of talent in that rotation. I mean, Cease obviously showed it last year, and I love Kopech as a starter.
Oh, yeah.
He just absolutely elite fastball.
100, but he just got so healthy.
It's just he's like the right-handed Chris Sale. So I mean, if he could figure that out a little bit more, I mean, he's kind of like DeGrom in that sense, I guess, because some of these guys that just absolutely pump 100 miles an hour every single pitch, they just can't stay healthy. So if somehow the trainers can figure out some new program for him to keep him on the field, this team could very much be better than that 500 record they had last year, which was a total bust season for them.
Yeah. Also, they got rid of, we have to mention, they did get rid of Tony La Russa. And
yes,
when he took a step back in the middle of the season, they immediately, I mean, I think they had a winning record.
They got better. They did
without him at manager. So that's definitely going to be a factor.
Definitely. I mean, he's not a player's coach, really. He's more of a, he's more hard-nosed and not really going to be in the players. He was talking about how's their day going and how's your family doing. He's really hard-nosed.
Whatever his strengths were, I mean, he's clearly over the hill at this point. He shouldn't be managing.
Still Hall of Fame head coach, of course. Manager, but he's not a great manager anymore. But they say though he's really strict and typically will get on the players' ears about them struggling, and then you lose the player if you're yelling at them constantly. You lose them. One guy that went in their rotation was their best pitcher before last season, heading into last year, was Giolito, and he actually fell apart a little last year. 4.9 ERA, 11.9 record, same win-loss record as he had in 2021, but 3.53 ERA in 2021 to 4.9 in 2022. A lot of those, I would say, probably had to do with it was walks. I think his walks did go up. It did go up by 9, which 9 more walks in 17 less innings. He was walking guys. I didn't watch the whole season, so I was really only looking at stats for the most part. When he pitched against the Red Sox, though, wasn't really that great. He was great against the Red Sox 2021, but if I remember in 2022, he didn't do that well.
I wonder if Spider Attack has something to do with his fall off, because that's around that.
That is a possibility.
272 batting average he allowed to opponents last year. 2020 184, 2021 219. Great point.
That's
impressive. You're right. Mm-hmm. And with more walks, obviously being a part of it, losing control, less innings even too. I mean, he's not staying in games because he's given up 7 runs in the first 3 innings. He's not staying in games anymore. Which I had him in fantasy 2 years ago, and he was great. So I was a fan of him then, and luckily didn't have him last year, so that's good. That's a positive.
Yeah, I mean, every pitcher in their rotation
is good.
Could
be the one on the Red Sox.
Could potentially be like a 2 or a 3 on another team.
Yeah. On you guys' rotations, Yankees and Mets would not be probably a 1 or 2 in your teams. The Red Sox, they would probably all be 1s and 2s.
Yeah. I mean,
Kluber's carrying it.
Yeah. James Paxton's on 1. Let's go. No, it's actually Corey Kluber's our opening day starter, so we'll see how that goes. Former Yankee great.
But yeah, I mean, I think just a lot of their team right now, the White Sox, I'm still on. They just have a lot of talent. It's just you don't really know what they're all going to do. I mean, like Luis Robert, elite talent, but you don't know what he's going to do. Same thing with Jimenez.
Jimenez, he's good. He was another guy that got hurt.
And Moncada too. I mean, just a lot of talent, but kind of volatile with what they put out every single year. So if they could all put it together, this could be a very fast rising team. But don't really know.
Yeah.
I mean, they're right on the border, I'd say, of being a playoff team. I mean, it's going to be a tough division, obviously, probably, with Cleveland being there as well. Probably Cleveland gets in, I'd imagine. Minnesota, I think, gets in or be right at the border. I think it might be tough for the White Sox fan, but here's the thing. If they just figure it out, the consistency part, they do have a good enough lineup. Tim Anderson's one of the best contact hitters in baseball. Every single day he gets a hit.
Yeah, I mean, he was up there in the MVP. I mean, besides...
But I think averages up there always,
besides, the 2 guys who were running away with it, I think he was top 10
he was,
last year.
Got a little power, too. He's a good player.
Yeah. one of the best shortstops in the league.
Definitely. I'd agree with that, yeah. They have a decent lineup, like you said. Good lineup.
Yeah,
Consistency's
really,
reason.
1 through 6, they, there's
Andrew
not
Vaughn
a bad
Solitaire,
hitter
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that Colas guy, Oscar Colas, right field, he's the number
Yeah.
2 prospect, it says here. So, see what he does, too. He's the right fielder for them.
Yeah,
projected, but
in my opinion, I don't think that the Guardians are really an elite talented team. So, I mean, if the White Sox can get on a run, they could easily overtake them, in my opinion. So,
yeah, I think the Guardians are a better team overall, but I'd say the White Sox have the chance, definitely. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree. It'd be tougher for them. I don't know if they were in the same division as like the Astros or something. I don't think they have a shot. But with the Cleveland's the best team in that division. I think they obviously could overtake them.
I think Cleveland is one of the worst number 1 teams in a division.
Yeah,
so.
They score runs though. But yeah, you're right.
It's them and the Cards.
Yeah,
the Cardinals. Cardinals are another team that's really just offensively heavy and pretty decent bullpen. But yeah,
they're kind of just like one of those teams that's just like well run.
Cardinals.
Yeah, to like make the playoffs almost every year.
Yeah. And they make good moves.
Also a terrible division.
Yes, probably the worst division.
Worst division. They make good moves though. Which that Beta from Montgomery trade was tough at first. Obviously, Yankees fans were mad about that. But I think Beta's a good player. I think he even works off of both teams. Honestly, to a degree.
Yeah.
To a degree, because Beta's still a Yankee, right? So you still have him.
Well, Bader's played about like 4 regular season games for them, maybe.
In the playoffs, he was the best
postseason
ever.
Who knows?
But Montgomery was unreal. He didn't get a run for like I think 4
Montgomery
starts. It was 3 or 4 starts with the Cardinals. But they make good moves. That team.
Yeah,
and when they do sign big free agents or make big moves, getting Arenado or Goldschmidt, it works out. Not every team takes those big swings and has it work. So it typically works for them for the most part.
Yeah.
So I think we're done with the White Sox.
Yeah, done with the White Sox. The last team in that division is the Guardians. So we already started talking about the Guardians a little. Obviously, you have a perennial all-star and potential MVP candidate every single season, Jose Ramirez. I always thought Jose Ramirez was a very good baseball player. I never thought he was an MVP until probably last year. I looked at all his stats, his advanced stats, and I was like, wow, he's actually really is one of the best players in baseball. I always thought he was good, but I never thought that good until I looked at his advanced stats and looked at his ability to hit, run in the scoring position. He can steal bases. He
has one of the highest home run rates of a player while also having one of the lowest strikeout rates.
Which is nuts.
Of a player, which is just a crazy combination.
So crazy, yeah.
I think the most interesting thing about them is they are returning every single player in their lineup except for Franmil Reyes, who they
for the better
because they replaced him with Josh Bell, who last year started out with the Nationals. Then was great. Got traded to the Padres as a part of the Soto deal. Switch hitter, one of the best contact hitters, and one of the highest walk rates in the league. So great on base guy. And then they're retaining every single player in the lineup and returning their entire rotation.
Yeah. And they have some young pieces there. Andres Jimenez, I think he was a Met, right? Didn't you trade him?
Him and Rosario were in the Lindor trade.
Who just signed an extension.
Yeah, so it's 7 years, right? 7-year extension.
Which is
nuts.
A ridiculous underpay.
How much money did you get?
105.
Yeah, not much.
Yeah.
So now, 7 years, 105.
Between him and J-Ram.
$23 million for an 8th year club option. So
yeah, between him and J-Ram, they have 2 excellent players signed for basically no money.
So nuts. 297 he hit last year, 837 OPS, 17 home runs, 69 RBIs, 20 stolen bases.
Yeah,
so
I mean, he was very good for the Mets in just his rookie year. Before we traded him, I think he was playing mostly second for us because we still had Rosario at short. We kind of just gave him our infield and said, "Here you go, give us Lindor." So
I mean, you probably had to give him right young piece.
I'd say it worked out.
That's a win-win.
Yeah, it works for both franchises, right? So it works.
It just kind of stunk seeing Jimenez doing so well.
Oh, yeah.
And Rosario never put it together for the Mets, and he's also doing fine for the Guardians. So
yeah, he actually was really good for them last year. He was one of the best hitters in the postseason actually too. So interesting though. Yeah, some guys have a change of scenery. It works.
Yeah, he kind of just seeing one of those players that need a smaller market to really focus on himself
to flourish. Yeah. He was good last year. 11 home runs, 283 batting average, 715 OPS.
Yeah, he's one of those lanky hitters that kind of just, if he connects with one, it can go 500 feet. It's just he doesn't really connect all too often.
You're right. He had he was 7 of 29 in the postseason. Not that great of a batting average, 240. I did hit a home run though, which I remember I talked about at some point in my podcast. But you're right though. He's solid talent.
It's also the Guardians as a team are one of the most contact oriented teams. They I believe were first in batting average last year, but bottom 5 in home runs. So I have a feeling that one of the reasons Rosario was able to turn it around is because most teams are asking guys to hit home runs, no matter what position they're playing. And for that approach works. On average, that approach works for most players, but there are certain players who make that move and then figure it out.
Yeah,
for whatever reason. Similar, Brandon Drury flamed out with the Mets and the Yankees.
Goes to the Reds.
And they just say, well, go back to how you hit in college and become an all-star.
Comes an all-star, gets traded.
Shows how much we know.
And now was an Angel. Another reason I think the Angels
Drury actually went on this crazy run for the Mets where I think it was... So it wasn't last year, it was the year before. Everybody in the Mets lineup was hurt, and he comes up and he's just absolutely lights out. Like pinch hitting, I think he was like 10 for 12 with 4 homers or something. It was
locked
nuts.
in.
Yeah.
It was nuts. But yeah, he definitely figured it out with the Reds, and I can't remember who he was traded to.
Padres.
The Padres.
Padres, and that was an Angel.
Yeah.
Got a deal from the Angels. 1 year deal though from the Angels. I think it was. It was 1 year, which I thought was interesting. If I remember off the top of my head, I think it was 1 year.
Homers, I remember.
I think the reason he only got... I think his peripherals, like his BABIP was like a little... like it was very high. Should I explain? Like,
you can.
So batting average on balls in play, which is just...
BIP, yeah.
Right, batting average minus strikeouts and home runs, which throughout a player's career stays consistent. His is really high, which might just mean he's a good contact hitter, but... generally, if you have a large sample size of a player, their BABIP usually stays constant. So when they see a player with a high BABIP, they're worried about regression. So they might not be willing to offer such a big contract.
I was looking at that. I saw yesterday someone made some statistic, an analytical research guy looked on Twitter, and he had a whole regression of like all the players that he thinks are going to do better this year in baseball by his metric, who's going to do worse. Drury was one of them, and Urshela both are going to regress, is what he said.
Yeah.
Which is tough for the Angels, my prediction, because I like both of those guys. And Drury got a 2-year, $17 million deal. So, 2 years, $17 million for the Angels. They had him regressing, which I don't know if it's maybe because, like he was saying, I'm not sure if it's
well, it's a sample. It's also a sample size issue because he's only had the 1 year as a starter. So it might be this is who he is.
Or it could be like you were saying, the strategy of just go swing and hit home runs. Well, it could be that.
Well,
I don't know.
it's just as from like the stats perspective, you can't, if he has this basically the same BABIP this year, they can look at him and say, okay, this is who he is as a player. But with just the 1 year, when you see a player with a BABIP that high, you have to assume it's
more than meets the eye.
You have to assume it's that he's due for regression.
Yes, I was going to say more than meets the eye. Well,
yeah,
definitely could be up for a downhill regression. But
anyway,
I like him though. I'm a fan of him. But
that has nothing to do with the Guardians.
No, I love it though. That's how we do things, But in that Guardians rotation though, Shane Bieber, obviously a Cy Young candidate.
Rotation.
Yeah.
Aaron Savali, former Northeastern great. He actually struggled a little bit last season. He battled injuries the entire season. Never could really find his footing. They only had about 3 or 4 consecutive starts the whole season. He played 4 games, then get hurt, then come back for 2 games, then get hurt again, then play 3 games, then get hurt again, play 1 game, get hurt again. He was hurt the entire season. Did pitch in that game against. It was against the Yankees. Did he pitch? He pitched in that wild card game, didn't he?
Yes.
Yep. Yes,
I think he did.
Because I remember I was very surprised to see him starting. I was like, whoa.
He pitched in a wild card game, maybe, or maybe a big game against the Yankees. Was it? Game 6.
Yeah, I want to say he pitched game. I kind of blocked out that postseason, but he definitely pitched at least once it was because he was their third pitcher.
Yeah,
they took Quantrill out of the rotation in the postseason.
Game 5 ALDS, that's what it was.
Yeah, they took Quantrill out of the rotation, and then Savali, I think, was injured or not.
Coming
Savali.
Back from the, he was supposed to be a reliever for them, and then they. Going to the postseason.
But
Plesac was he was supposed to be a reliever going into the postseason, but I think they saw that, everything went downhill. Yeah. You're the only one that could actually start a game right now. So threw him in there. I don't even think he recorded an out. He might have got 1 out, I think. Yeah, but a good amount of runs in the first inning.
Wasn't good.
But I'm a fan of him. I saw him pitch in Northeastern a good amount, and you had a lot of talent back then, and he's shown a lot of good stuff in the MLB, just has really battled injuries. And I hopefully we'll see him get back on track.
Yeah, I like Plesac as a star. I think he has a ton of potential.
Yeah.
And he kind of went viral for some of the plays he made in the field, like all these jump throws and slide throws.
Behind the back
and
stuff.
Diving for the base and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's doing a lot of things that makes you excited, but he also has some off-the-field issues, and all kinds of stuff. But
Yeah.
if he can stay focused and really dial it in this year, I don't see why he can't be the number 2 in that rotation.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Well, he can't be the number 2 because Tristan McKenzie is also great.
Tristan McKenzie, yeah.
Sure.
He is.
I mean, he's pretty young. I want to say
Is he 26, I guess?
Yeah.
25, 26?
and
I can look right now and make sure.
he made the Yankees look pretty silly.
25.
Yeah,
2.96 ERA last year, 11-11
Yeah.
record, 190 strikeouts and 191 innings. Just about a strikeout innings. Pretty good.
he's great, and you have to imagine that this year he continues to be great. I mean, he's 25. Like,
Yeah.
and to be a starter that young is like so difficult.
Definitely. Especially with the expectations, probably.
Oh,
You
yeah.
step into that rotation, every pitch in the rotation is
Yes.
typically good. So you step in and
Yes.
have to be.
I mean,
performing.
even like Cal Quantrill, who we haven't said, like Cal Quantrill is like a solid
Good
number
player,
3
yeah.
starter, and he's going to be probably their worst pitcher.
He'd be the Sox one or two.
Right.
Probably 2, but yeah. I just saw McKenzie's from Brooklyn, New York, so that's probably why he likes to play the Yankees. Maybe grow up a Yankees fan and wants to show them up.
They just, they make them different there.
They do. They do. And then one other guy in that lineup we didn't really mention too much about, Stephen Kwan, really came into the picture
yeah.
last year and was great for them in the postseason,
yeah.
even the regular season. Was top of the MLB in batting average. It was, I believe, Rookie of the Year, if I remember right. I think he was Rookie of the Year.
J-Rod was.
J-Rod was? Okay, maybe,
Wow.
maybe second. He was second.
He
to
was
J-Rod. That's what it is.
last year was a very
You're right, J-Rod
tough
was.
year for rookie. He would have been Rookie of the Year like the
Any
last
other
10
year.
years.
But J-Rod was in there. Besides the Judge year, probably Rookie of the
Yes.
Year, yeah. I would agree with you. In the Ohtani year, every other year probably would be Rookie of the Year. I'd agree. But yeah, Kwan's a very good player. Decent lineup, obviously all around. The great pitching as well. They'll probably win that division, even though, as like Dan said, which I would agree, probably the weakest of the one teams. 1 seeds from each division.
I think they're better
Win
than
every
the
division.
Cardinals, personally.
I think it's close. They probably have a better rotation than the Cardinals. Yeah, maybe I would give them the edge over the Cardinals.
I would say, yeah, they're definitely the bottom 2, number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's
would
just the
agree.
central divisions are just, that's where all,
They're struggling.
yeah.
Yeah, struggling. I would agree with you there. Anything else to add on them?
They're
just some Yankee favorites, Josh Naylor and Miles Straw in that lineup. But,
all of our favorites.
Every player. Terry Francona, too.
Yes, Terry.
Favorite manager.
Terry. They're going to be rocking their
Tito.
baby all the way to first in the division.
With that division, yeah.
Yes.
I love Terry Francona. Great manager. And me and my dad actually met him at a BC football game. I think it was last year. He was he's still getting treatment for cancer. So he was in a wheelchair, and it was right outside of Conti Forum. No, it was outside the gym, actually. It was outside the Plex. And he was there because his daughter is, I believe, the associate athletic director for something in the athletic department. And he was there with her, I think it was. She had a badge and everything, and she was pushing him, and me and my dad were walking. I was like, Dad, is that Terry Francona? He goes, no way. I was like, yeah, it's him. So we went over just at high rate break. He didn't really give us a great conversation. He was, tough situations in a wheelchair. He was probably just trying to get through the crowd because it was packed trying to get into the game. But he did say hello, which I thought was cool. I did meet Trot Nixon this weekend. So it's a random player, but I did meet Trot Nixon. Former Red Sox legend, World Series champ. His son actually plays baseball for NC State.
Cool.
Chase Nixon. So got to meet him. He was cool. We talked to him for a minute. So
Trot
random
and
there.
Chase.
Chase.
Excellent baseball player names.
Well, he played for Cleveland, and we're talking, players.
Yeah.
We met Terry Francona, so I just connected it all. He played for Francona.
There
so
we go.
Connected. Before we jump to another division, maybe we jump to the Mets and talk about them before you go around 8. Or
Yeah.
let's talk Mets when we jump into the other 2 divisions of the AL. Let's talk Mets. Obviously, active offseason. Justin Verlander, probably the biggest piece of the offseason. Probably the best pitcher of the market besides, I guess, DeGrom. You went with one and you let the other one go. So 2 great players there. Obviously, so you're picking and choosing between one or the other. And then also, the whole career side we already broke down. But you also got a couple other pieces, too. You re-signed Ottavino. Gave Edwin Diaz that big contract. Obviously, they didn't work out with the injury. I think the long term will be fine. Brandon Nimmo got a big deal.
To a huge deal. Thankfully signed Robertson.
David Robinson, yes.
So he could slot into that closer role behind.
Ottavino could even be the 8th inning guy.
Ottavino had like a 2.08 ERA last year, so
Yankee legend.
He could do it as well.
You do not want Ottavino closing. That's
he
all
was
I'll
he was
say.
he was great as a setup man last year. But
That's where we'll
yeah,
stay.
He's an 8th inning guy. He is not a 9th inning guy.
He did give us a few headaches last year. And then I don't know if you mentioned it, but bringing in Kodai Senga.
I didn't mention it. No, I forgot about Senga. Forgot about him. Wow.
Mets also traded for Brooks Reilly from the Rays.
Rays, yep.
That's probably also signed Omar Narvaez as catcher.
Oh, yeah.
He was an all-star 2020, I
2
believe.
years ago.
Yep.
So I mean, I'm not expecting too much out of him. Just to kind of slot into the catching role for the next year or so until Alvarez is ready to catch for them. But overall, I mean, I would have loved to have Correa, but I mean, Mets are in a position right now with the team that they have, even without Diaz, to be top 3, top 4 in the MLB, and they're still top 3, top 4 World Series favorites, even without Diaz. I'm a little scared about their bullpen just because they don't have him, and their bullpen wasn't all that great last year outside of Diaz and Ottavino. But, I mean, they do have a lot of pieces that can fill into the back end of that rotation. They have a guy who was pumping 100 miles an hour every single pitch in spring training, and sure enough, he had forearm tightness like the next day. So he's out for like a month. So
that's how it goes. Those 100-mile-an-hour guys.
Yeah.
So I mean, so Met fans were really high on him, but they'll have some pieces in that bullpen that can hopefully step up. Like they got a few guys like Drew Smith, someone who's had consistently like a 3 ERA in that bullpen.
Yeah.
So he'll take on a bigger role. He did a little bit of that last year. And thankfully, Mets got rid of Joely Rodriguez.
I was going to say, the Red Sox took him off your hands. The Red Sox took him off your hands. I was just going to mention him. He's a lefty, right? So, I mean, I guess that's part of the reason.
And I mean, in all fairness, that trade with the Yankees was probably a lose-lose for both teams. Yankees getting Miguel Castro.
He was all right before he got hurt. He wasn't bad.
Yeah, he was bad for the Mets.
We had so many bullpen injuries that he was solid. He wasn't terrible. He was not as bad as what's his name was for you.
Yeah, you guys had a ton of injuries that year, the Yankees. Chad Green was the only guy out there that could say healthy.
It was.
Yeah, I mean, it was so tough for the Mets because they would bring in Joely for any big lefty so many times against Juan Soto, especially when he was on the Nationals. And I mean, any single time you would come into the game, it doesn't matter if the team is up by 7 or something, you could be like, oh no, what are we doing? Because every single time he comes in, he didn't really have too much of a problem with walking guys for the Mets. It was just every single time he would just get lit up. So
yeah, hard. I mean, the Red Sox are going to see that.
It was tough with him, but also even before they got him with Miguel Castro, there was one Mets game I went to. DeGrom was on the hill. I think he gave up like 2 hits or something over, what was it? I think 6 innings, and he had 2 RBIs in that game. So single-handedly,
I remember that game.
He carried that game. I think it was the first game at Citi Field that the stadium was back at full capacity or something. And so awesome. I was at that game, and they take him out at the end of the 6th when he was only at like 80 pitches, and everyone was like, "What is going on?" And sure enough, that was the first of one of his like 8 injuries that year, and then he didn't end up pitching the second half. I think that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was the full capacity June of 2021 is when it flipped to full capacity, I think. That's what Fenway did right around then.
Yeah. So, I mean, so my point with that was they brought in Castro after that, and immediately he gave up like 2 runs, and the Mets were only up 3-2. They wound up sticking it out 1-3-2 that day, but geez, that was when I realized Castro was a big problem with the team.
A classic DeGrom no decision is really the story.
Because he won a Cy Young with like 11 wins that year, right?
With a losing record.
Yeah.
10 wins, I think he had that year or something. He was like 10-11 or something, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't his fault, though. It was just no offensive production. I mean, it's part of the game. You have to have some offensive help, right?
And I mean, since then, Mets have managed to turn around with that lineup that they have. I think bringing in Marte was very underrated signing.
I told you they signed Marte, so that's a huge signing. I love Marte.
Yeah, he's great.
Like, he's getting less than $20 million for the next 3 years.
Can steal bases, has a little power, good glove.
They have a ton of
stays healthy.
In their lineup.
So, I mean, with him and Nimmo at the top, I think that's a very good one, too. And then Pete at number 3, that's very good as well. And
Canna, too, they got in the offseason last year.
Yeah, Canna's a very interesting player because you could tell when he's in the on-deck circle that he's really thinking about what the pitcher's going to do. He's one of those type of hitters that is always thinking about where he is in the count and what the pitcher's going to throw. So I mean, sometimes that's a blessing and a curse because then you get like an A-Rod situation where he just gets a fastball right down the middle and he does nothing with it. But I mean,
no A-Rod slander here. No, just kidding.
But I
do like A-Rod though.
I like Canna as a guy in the middle of that lineup. Very good for the clubhouse as well, and obviously I love my guy Vogie Burgers. Yeah. Definitely.
Vogelback. Yeah. No, he was good for you guys when you guys picked him up, right? Mid-season last year.
He absolutely kills righties. It was just the other side of that DH platoon that was a problem with Darren
Ruff. DFA.
So giving him the DFA was probably for the best.
Designate from assignment, yeah.
But what didn't make sense was the Mets have another guy who he's kind of like between first baseman and third baseman, not a great defensive guy. Mark Vientos, I think he's their number 5 or 6 prospect right now. And he had like 20-something homers, hit like 270 in AAA, and everyone was thinking that they were going to call him up after Beatty being sent down, but they also sent him down. So it was like, well, who's going to take that other side of the platoon now? And I think that's going to go to Tommy Pham for the time being. So
he was actually decent for the Sox at one point last year. We got him mid-season for the Reds at the trade deadline, but wasn't great. But he was good enough to get some every other game time.
Yeah, so I mean, I think they got him with the idea that he was going to be their 4th outfielder because they needed one after the whole Khalil Lee saga. But I mean, we'll see how he does in the DH platoon for the time being. I think he's just there to hold that down until either Beatty or Vientos is ready to take over in either the platoon or third base. Because if Beatty comes up and plays third base full time, then they could switch over Escobar to take that other side of the platoon. Because Escobar is much better from the right side of the plate than the left. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Jeez, he was
the eye test. It's like he does look lost when he's against. Yeah,
it was nuts. I think he had a big homer against Montgomery. It was in
Jordan Montgomery
in the Subway Series. It was definitely from the right side of the plate. So I don't think the Yankees had too many lefties.
No,
it probably wasn't Nestor because Nestor doesn't give up hits. So
yeah, not Nestor, never.
No.
But, I mean, all in all, I think Mets are in a good spot. Would have liked them to improve the lineup a little bit more than they did, but, I mean, you can't really ask for everything. They already brought in Verlander
and Quintana.
So.
And Quintana we forgot to mention, right?
Yeah.
Did they get him?
Didn't mention him, but he's on the...
Did you mention him? I thought you did.
So he's out until July because he had a rib surgery or something. So... He's out before he even started, so hopefully when he gets back, he'll be able to take over that number 4 starter role. Because Carrasco at number 4 is a little makes me a little bit nervous. But Mets also have David Peterson has been very solid lefty for them for the past 3 years or so. There was just not a whole lot of consistency from him. He was great as a rookie, but. Not a whole lot of consistency from him, and if he could find that, I mean, he was absolutely filthy in spring training this year. He should be able to surpass Carrasco in terms of his stats that he produces, because Carrasco was not very good last year. So,
is there a chance that Peterson gets moved to the bullpen after Quintana comes back?
So, I mean, I don't know what their plan is with Carrasco, because if Carrasco's pitching horribly, then they might have to either cut ties with him, try him in the bullpen. Like Peterson has shown, and he pitched a little bit in the bullpen when the rosters expanded last year, and it was kind of a mixed bag. Like there were some times that he had zero control, and there were also some times that he struck out the side. So we'll see what he could do. He has a very, very good changeup as a lefty, and he can also throw 97. So,
and they do kind of need a lefty in the rotation.
Yes,
so.
Absolutely. Lefties was the big problem with their rotation and
the bullpen rotation
last year because Joely was the only one on the roster that was a lefty. So,
I think with the Edwin Diaz injury, it's a tough loss losing him for the year. But I think you guys have enough depth on your major league team, even your minor league team too. If you guys were to get to a position, let's say in May. Where the Red Sox probably should have done this last year. We were blowing games in May and June, but we just chose to neglect the closing role, and we just did we'll just try to figure out the guys we have on the team. Blew a lot of games because I think if the Mets were to get in a position where they're losing games because of that, they would go and make a trade. Because you guys have the luxury to be able to move anyone in your farm system. You guys have a great farm system, a lot of top prospects. Even on your major league roster, a lot of depth.
Yeah.
Especially early in the season, teams will still take major league players. When you get towards the middle of the season, you trade with teams like the Reds, they really want prospects for the most part, but beginning of the season, teams will still take current players for the most part.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised if they were to say move like an Alex Ramirez, maybe like a Jet Williams, like 2 guys that are on the cusp of like their top 5 prospects.
Williams is a first rounder, right?
So
it'd be tough to trade him. But.
Still on the younger side, so they're not trading like a Beatty or Alvarez, those type of players. And it sees like the Mets really like Parada as well, so I don't think they want
Parada's
to trade him
beast.
yet.
He had a home run today. He had his first
Oh, really?
home run of the season. Yeah, I think.
I heard about it.
I mean, just started, so I guess first home run of the season anyways. But yeah, I just saw it today. You were right, exactly right about Eduardo Escobar. 263 batting average as a righty versus left-handed pitchers with an 827 OPS. Flip it as a lefty hitter versus a righty pitcher. 231 batting average, so 263 down to 231. OPS went down to 10, 827 to 681. So almost 100,
There you go.
140, 150 points right there.
What were his home run totals?
11 against righties, so more home runs against righties, but he also had a lot more at-bats.
Yeah.
333 at-bats and 11 home runs.
9 homers, was it?
9 homers, drilled it in 172 plate appearances.
Yeah.
So 368 plate appearances as a
So
righty.
half as many plate appearances.
Against righties, yes. And the home run total, if you divided that, he's doing a lot better. Home runs per at-bat versus the lefties. But impressive, obviously, with the OPS being that much of a difference. 150 is a good amount.
Yeah.
It's a big difference there. So you were right about that. You drilled that. You knew the home run total, too. Look at him. He's like, you did. You guys are the numbers. I love it.
Yeah, because I remember everyone was making a big deal that he reached 20 homers, and they were saying great season from Escobar. And I was like, did you not see the first 5 months of the season? He was horrible. So,
Didn't he heat up though at one point in the season though, like August or July? I think he did.
I think it was September.
He was crushing it.
Yeah, I think September he was absolutely
No
killing it.
one cares how you play in April. No one
September.
cares how you play in September.
It was April,
home runs.
May, June, July, just horrible.
So here's the splits. So I'll start with, I guess, April, March was 253, which I guess around his career average anyways. But after that, May, 212 batting average. June, 207. July, 220. August, only 14 games, 9 starts, so he's getting platooned at that point heavily. 177 was his batting average. Then you look at September, October, though. 30 games played. 8 home runs, really good. 25 RBIs, 321 batting average, 982 OPS. He heated up.
Yeah, he said something in May that was I'm just waiting, and Mets fans, you will find the reason to cheer for me. And I was waiting. I was waiting May. I was waiting June.
True.
And you got there. 385.
September, I guess it was coming, but by then the Braves already passed the Mets, and I was like, well, you're too late, dude.
Yeah, he did come on late. Did have a 385 at base percentage in September, October, too. So it's a pretty impressive finish of the year. It's really September because they only played about 2 or 3 regular season games probably in October, but month of September he was great.
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Mets also have a guy, Luis Guillorme, who
he's got some time, hasn't he?
Very much only contact hitter. But I mean, if you leave any part of the left side of the infield open, he will just slap it there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's taken away some of those right-handed pitchers away from Escobar, so they can relieve some of that lefty Escobar madness.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I would agree with you there, though. Probably the platoon yet again with those guys.
Yeah, because Buck really loves Luis.
Platooning.
Yeah.
He likes platooning too, right?
Yeah.
He's been doing that his whole career with guys in the
Yeah,
Orioles
I
that even
mean,
now.
the only problem with it is that you need to get guys consistent at-bats, and I think that's part of the reason why Ruff was so bad for the Mets, because we pretty much exclusively had him against lefties. And lefties aren't that common.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
You're right.
He started one every 4 games, maybe.
Yeah, you can't really get consistent
And
at-bats.
he had a few pinch hit at-bats, but...
Which is even worse.
Yeah.
That's if someone's not in a
so-
groove, you're going to get
I mean,
cold
that's
to the pitch.
why he hit 106 or whatever he hit last year. So it's a very tough position to be in as a hitter. So I don't blame him too much, but he did not succeed with the Mets, and it was best to cut ties with him there.
I would agree with you, yeah.
It was just not going to work, and I think Buck said the same thing. He was it was one of the toughest decisions one of the toughest interactions I've had to do as a manager, but I think it works the best for both sides. For
Nice guy. I actually met him when he was a Philly in
Yeah.
2014 or 15. Because I met Ryan Howard. My grandfather was a Phillies fan, so I met the Phillies on the field at Fenway, and I got a picture of him. Didn't talk to him much, maybe 35, 40 seconds. He did sign an autograph and stuff, which is cool. Nice guy.
Yeah,
so I imagine he's still a good guy.
It really stunk because the Mets had to give up J.D. Davis, who ended up being tremendous for the Giants.
Yeah, he turned it around, actually. He turned it up.
Nuts.
Yeah.
He turned it up.
He was another guy that just...
He was a
kinda
late
had
fantasy
to
baseball
leave.
pickup at the end of the season.
He was
turned
another
it
guy
up.
that the Mets kind of... he wasn't going to do it for the Mets. I mean, he had one great year where he hit 280 and had 20 homers or something, and then just never replicated that in the slightest bit. But had to give up him and their number 10 prospect or something, and then another 2 prospects that were probably going to be ranked inside the top 20 if they were in this year. But I mean, what are you going to do? If Ruff turned it around and hit 250 and had a bunch of homers, I would be saying, "Oh, great trade." But
Yeah.
I mean, you can't look back on it based on results. So.
Hindsight, it's tough. One question I want to ask you, I know you're going to be dipping in a second. One question I want to ask you before you go, ask Dylan as well. What are your expectations of Verlander going into the year? Obviously, he's coming off probably his best season of his career. Cy Young, looking at stats here, 1.75 ERA, 18-4 record. His best ERA of his career, 18 wins. His most, besides 2019, since 2011. He had 24 in 2011, did have 21 in 2019. But second highest win total since 2011, which is really impressive. Best ERA, 175 innings pitched. So he stayed healthy, too. That was one thing. Obviously, he missed all of 2021. Coming back from that Tommy John surgery was great, 2022. What are your expectations going into the year for him? And then get Dylan's opinion on it, too.
Yeah, so I think that what did you say?
175, which I don't always do 175 again.
Not,
You'd probably take 2-3 and be happy. Right?
Yeah. 175 is definitely not sustainable, but I mean, I'm expecting somewhere in the 2.3, 2.5 range. I mean, even like a 2.7, I'd be happy with, just because I mean, you get that from your number 2 starter.
You're in a very good spot.
Because I mean, Scherzer's like their number 1 just because he's been there, but. I mean, yeah, he's getting $40 million, but yeah, like 2.7, I would be thrilled with, and I don't see why he can't get sub 2.3. So, just absolutely technical pitcher, just knows the game, just absolutely knows the game. So, I mean, I think it's a great signing, even though he's getting a boatload of money over these next 3 years, but. I mean, like, what's the alternative? They could have said, "Hey, we'll sign you for 6 years for $30 million each year," and then you're on the shelf for until he's 45. So
definitely,
I mean, I think it was a good signing, and I'm liking what we're going to see from him. And Senga is a huge wild card for them because he could be like the Yankees Tanaka. And he has this ghost fork pitch that I've heard a lot about, which. Could be just like Tanaka's split.
Split, right? Yeah, split, right?
Yeah. I mean, he could be like a number 1 ace on some teams if he lives up to his potential. But I mean, I'm not expecting too much, so I'm expecting somewhere in like the 3
for Senga?
4 for Senga, just because it's going to take him a little bit of time to adjust to major league hitting, as opposed to what he was seeing overseas. But I mean. If we can get somewhere like sub 3 from him first year, I'd be absolutely thrilled.
I was gonna say hot take. I was gonna say Senga 2.9 before you even gave it 3, 4. I was gonna say 2.8, 2.9. I think he could be. From watching his highlights, as I said, I didn't watch his games overseas, like you said, but watch his highlights. I mean, he's a lot of movement.
Because he could get up to triple digits, but he can also just wipe you out with that ghost fork that he has.
It's heavily pursued too. You guys got him. The Yankees were interested. I think the Red Sox were interested. Just about every team, all the big ones, Dodgers, Yankees,
all the teams with international pool money were throwing it at him.
We're interested.
Yeah, the Tully was telling me like, oh yeah, like the Padres are gonna get him.
Well, they're paying everyone in their bonus, right? They're not really gonna find a way to really pay anyone else in a couple of years with that Bogarts contract. Everyone else, they still have to pay Soto, so they'll be in trouble in a couple of years. If they win a World Series, it's worth it. If they don't, I mean, it'd be a failure if they don't. But for the Mets, so I would agree with those expectations for those two guys. What do you think about Verlander though?
I will have to admit I'm biased. I don't like Verlander, and I like Max Scherzer way better.
Scherzer's still the one, though, so that's good.
Which I think Scherzer's the better pitcher, and I don't know. Their rotation's going to be great. I mean, the only issue is if people get hurt. It's hard to, I think the alternative, like we were saying, is like the alternative to signing Verlander was signing DeGrom, and I think given that choice, signing Verlander just makes more sense. Verlander was healthy, and DeGrom hasn't been able to stay healthy. And it's been such a consistent issue that even if Verlander did fall off significantly or just revert to being, just a good pitcher and not the Cy Young winner, it's still better than only, how many starts did DeGrom have last year?
He did not pitch the first half. So.
It was
right.
15,
like
12 to 15 maybe as a guess.
Yeah, so...
I'll tell you right now. 5-4 record in... It was 11 starts.
11, yeah.
So, for record 3.01 ERA.
Given that he just got a massive contract from Texas...
5 years, 185,
Yeah, no. They made the absolute right decision by going after Verlander instead. So, yeah.
I would agree. I think good things for the Mets. Anything you just
Yeah.
want to add in? I know you're going to go. But
Yeah, I mean, it stunk because, he was definitely a fan favorite. I mean, at that one game that I referenced, like, everyone was chanting MVP. Like, this dude,
stud.
he was going
Yeah.
absolutely nuts. And, I mean, he's been with the team since 2014 when he came up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, seeing him go,
he's like the last member of that team.
yeah,
Series team, yeah.
the next longest tenured Met, I think, is Nimmo now. And
Nimmo
didn't come up until 2017.
17, 18.
That's crazy.
Which, yeah, it's a little nuts because Mets had a rotation from 2015 where they had Harvey, DeGrom,
Syndergaard.
Wheeler, Syndergaard,
Steven Matz. Steven
the
Matz,
five of
my
them.
boy.
Yeah.
Wheeler was actually hurt that year, but I think they had Bartolo Colon in that rotation.
Yes, they
too.
did. They
Forgot
did have
about
Cologne, and that was the year he hit the home run.
Yeah,
Big sexy.
yeah. Against the Padres.
Yes.
It was.
James Shields.
Yeah, you drilled it. I forgot about Bartolo Colon being there. Jeez. He was with us a couple of years, right?
But yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was like the glory rotation for them, and it just was never really put together because Matt Harvey had his off the field issues, and Syndergaard was hurt a bunch, and
Matz was the only one that was healthy.
DeGrom really didn't have injury troubles until like 2018.
Yeah.
He actually had Tommy John when he was in the minors, but
That's when he started throwing fast, though. Like 16, 17, when he started
Yeah.
hitting like 100 consistently.
yeah, and he had the back-to-back Cy Youngs, and so it stinks as a Met fan because of what could have been, but and he was definitely a fan favorite on the Mets, but like you said, between him and Verlander, you definitely take the Verlander for those 3 years.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I would take Scherzer still probably over all three, just for
Yeah.
1 year.
By-
So you have two of the
by
three
far.
best. That's the thing. So it's
Yeah.
not like you're losing one and now Verlander is your watch. Even that would be fine. You still have Max Scherzer too. So I think that was also a cushion where if DeGrom leaves, okay, worst case scenario, we just have Scherzer and then you have Senga. Then you add in a guy like Verlander. You guys were in a great position there. You guys had a lot of leverage there, honestly, to a degree,
Yeah.
because you could sign anyone you want with the money you can spend. Obviously,
Yeah, I love Scherzer. He's like he was immediately like the new fan favorite when he came in. Just with just all the antics that he does on the mound and on
The energy.
and
His
dugout.
psycho intensity, yes.
It's like
the heterozygous
that's-
eyes.
yeah.
He's fuming. He's mad. I
as
love
a Met
it.
fan, seeing him,
He's yelling. I love it.
as a Met fan, seeing him on the Nationals, you hated that guy with all your
yeah.
guts. But then he comes over and you're like, this guy's the best dude in the world, because you could just see he cares like so much,
Yeah.
and
Wants to win.
Whenever he gives up a hit, he's just like. He's
I love that he's
stomping
showing his
around.
face. You see him just screaming.
He's-
Yeah.
yeah.
But
He's
yeah,
always
I mean,
mad.
I love him as a pitcher, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I'm excited for the Mets, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting times in New York, both teams.
Yeah. I always say sports are better, which I say to Boston sports and New York sports in general. I always say sports are always better when New York and Boston, both New York teams, that is,
Yeah.
are good.
Mm-hmm.
It's competitive, obviously,
Yeah.
brings an edge. When you have New York and Boston playing each other in any sport, there's going to be people that want to watch when they're both good. It creates, obviously elevation. Obviously, Yankees and Red Sox being in the same division, the rivalry, that's obviously big. But Yankees, Mets, too, that's an even
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
one just across town, which is awesome.
Yeah, I wonder where the Mets would be if they still had the Wilpons as owners. That's
New ownership's a big
Wow.
thing. That's a big step forward. You're right.
I think you'd
I
probably,
think they would still have Cespedes.
you'd probably want to
Probably.
look at like what
And
the
Cano.
Angels are doing right now.
And the Angels, I was just
Yeah.
going to say, the Angels got to get Ronnie Moreno. Once Moreno's gone, flip the switch. They're going to be a great team, I think, but we'll see. But, yeah, thank God they got rid of them.
Yeah.
But anything else you want to add in? I know you got a dip, so don't want to hold you. But
Got you.
anything you want to add in? Go Mets. I know you obviously big day Thursday.
Yeah, go Mets.
So have you win, obviously, at some point to talk everything else Mets, which we didn't do any predictions, but if you had to say a World Series prediction, I know this is tough on the spot here. If you don't have it, you can say you can come back in a week or two and give it. I mean, on the spot's tough, but right before you dip,
I'll say,
yours.
other than Mets, because obviously I'm biased, it's not Mets. I'll go Blue Jays. I like from what I saw
okay.
from their rotation and their lineup. I think they are very deep.
That's a
And I
bold
know you
pick.
don't. And I know you don't want to hear that one.
It's tough. It's tough, yeah, because the Blue Jays love playing the Red Sox. They blew us out a 27-5 game. I lost all respect. So not a big fan of them, but they do have a really good team. So I'd agree with
when
you.
they brought in Bassett, and he's another guy that
four.
kind of has that
Three.
Scherzer energy. Like, I think it was first month of the season last year. He was down 3-0 against Soto, and just pumped him with 3 high fastballs in a row, struck him out. And reporters were like, did you have like a plan like going in, like that you were gonna like throw the fastball against Soto? Like, did someone tell you about like fastball? And he said, no, not really. It's just I don't really care who you are, but when you're up against me, I'm gonna challenge you. And
He's right.
He's kind of got that dog mentality in him. So I mean,
The Clipper mentality.
Yeah,
Dog mentality. Yeah. Clipper, they found their identity last night. We're not going to jump into the question. They did find their identity last night. That team's different now.
yeah. So I mean, I think he got like 4 years for $80 million or something like
that. Yeah,
Or-
just
yeah.
for 20 a year. Yeah.
So I mean, he deserves it. He's a very good pitcher. I love from what I saw him.
And Senga took his spot basically in the rotation, I thought.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like a 1-for-1 there, and
Same with Verlander and
yeah. I mean, whatever the Mets can get from Quintana in the second half of the year, we'll take.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I like the Mets even though with the injuries, like you said, I just didn't think it'd be a World Series team, but still probably winning the NL in
Yeah,
my
they
eyes.
have, even with Quintana on the shelf, they have more healthy pitchers than the Yanks. So
It's true.
It's true.
It's true.
It's
yeah.
true.
True.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see. But hey, Dan, thank you so much for coming in. Much appreciated having you in the studio. The King of Hasbrouck Heights, Dan, the man himself. Big New York Giants fan as well. Which we have both of you guys in to talk about the NFL draft. That's not now, a month from now, but
Yeah.
it actually is a month
seriously.
from now, just about a month from probably this Thursday it'll be. So we'll have you talk about the NFL draft and obviously maybe give more predictions about the MLB
Yeah,
before
yeah,
then.
yeah.
But thank you for coming in, Dan. Much appreciated.
of course, thank you guys for having me.